Ohio farmers having a slow go of it this planting season. They are dealing with some of the most challenging conditions all across the corn and soybean growing states in the Midwest. I'm Ty Higgins. This is an Ohio Farm Bureau podcast special. Some of the crops that have already been planted off to a rough start due to highly saturated soils. It's getting to the point that farmers are going to have to make some tough decisions about the 2025 growing season and have some tough conversations with other interested parties tied to their operation. We bring in Nathan Brown to talk more about that. He farms in Highland County. He's also a state trustee with Ohio Farm Bureau. Mr. Brown, good to see you. Welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, Ty. It's great to be here on this beautiful rainy morning, even though my background shows otherwise.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, I mean, that obviously is green screened in because that would be the site you would want to see as we move through this spring season, but not necessarily what we're getting from Mother Nature. Before we get into really the complications of this planting season, give us a background on you. Tell us about your farm and how this planting season has gone for you. What kind of progress you've been able to make.
So yeah, as you said, we farm down here in Island County. A first generation farmer, and we primarily are corn and soybeans. We raise a little bit of wheat on and off. Um, we've had a cattle herd over the years and a flock of sheep, and we've kind of dwindled those down. But this has been a one of the more challenging springs that I've encountered. Up until this point, we have yet to plant any corn, and we have put about 300 acres of soybeans in the ground to this point, and I'm not proud of any of those. But we've got some tiled land that and cover crop ground that we've pushed a little bit on, but it's been few and far days of actually being in the fields here.
I talked to a farmer yesterday. He said morale is low and tensions are high. Would you concur?
Oh yeah. I know the phone conversations, the text messages, the Facebook messages that I've had, over the last few weeks, have just been the morale is down. I know, yesterday I was having a bad day yesterday, and I had to go. I was spraying, and I broke some boom fittings, and I didn't have enough here on hand, so I had to run to the store to grab some. And I walked in the door, and the guys was like, was asking what they could do to help, and it's like there is nothing you can do to help. I just it wasn't their fault. It wasn't my fault. It was just tensions are high right now, and knowing what to do or what not to do, you look at the calendar, and the progress that we have made so far is minimum, and the work yet to be done is far greater. And when you have rain come every other day, it's do you push it? Do you not? Do you wait? Do you not? There's so many decisions to be made, and so many challenges to overcome.
Yeah, let's dig into that. You mentioned the calendar. As you and I talk, we're at the end of May. We have a big rain coming through that's going to push planting back at least a few 4 days for a lot of farmers in the southern half of the state where you are. June 5th is the crop insurance deadline for corn. A couple of weeks after that, on the 20th for soybeans. So as a farmer, what are the options being considered as you turn that calendar from May to June and have the type of planting season that you've had so far?
You know, as a farmer, we're always trying to mitigate our risk, and one way that we try to do that on our farm is through crop insurance. Um, and so, we're looking at what things are out there to help us get through this session. Do we change varieties? Do we change our fields from corn to soybeans? Do we, there's just lots of decisions on the table right now to try to mitigate our risk here.
But the first option is always to plant, right? That's obviously the goal is to get the crop in the ground.
Yes, as seemingly obvious as that is our number one goal as a farmer is to plant. And when I mean, honestly, like yesterday, I was struggling with trying to decide, do I go to a softball game with my daughter or do I stay home and mud soybeans in? And that desire to plant and to put a crop in the ground is so strong. Yet, you know that the maybe the decision that you're making is not going to have the best outcome. How do we mitigate that risk?
I know that, well, even when you're not being challenged, you probably talk to yourself a whole lot and you bring your wife, Jennifer, into the conversation too. But when you have these decisions to make, who else is part of that process? Who else do you bring into the conversation to talk about these options?
I think my number one go-to is my seed dealer. Him and I are on a daily basis having conversations of do we change crops? Do we shuffle varieties? Do we look for shorter maturities? Um, what can we do there? Talking with my fertilizer dealers and crop protection guys, we around here, a lot of guys haven't even got a lot of their burn down done. And so now we're facing bigger weeds and later in the season trying to get those weeds killed and what kind of residuals and what kind of chemical programs are we going to use. And now we're bumped up on a crop insurance deadline. And if we don't get corn planted, then you don't want corn herbicides out because then that may restrict you going to soybeans and then having that open conversation with your banker of, hey, you know, this is where we are. Um, there's years where it's very localized. I think this year is more broad, across the state from people that I've talked to, and just having those conversations of I've tried my best. I had everything ready to rock and roll, and Mother Nature just not been cooperative. And what are my options with you guys? If we bump up, and have issues down the road.
Many would be surprised to know that about half of the cropland in Ohio is rented, which means there are maybe some landlords out there that are wondering why the corn and soybeans aren't in their fields yet. What's the holdup? Why aren't we seeing any progress being made? Are you hearing from your landlords and having some questions about why things aren't where they should be at this point of the year?
I think as up to this point, I think a lot of landlords have realized and recognized that, and all my landlords are pretty local, that there have been challenges in getting into the fields. It's not just an isolated issue where the farmers just not getting out and getting their work done. It's Mother Nature has made this one of the, I think I seen on the news, one of the top 10 wettest springs on record, and so, but there is, as we are bumping up onto this date, there are more conversations that need to be had with those.
What are the concerns? What do I guess the misconceptions or misperceptions from a landlord standpoint that farmers might be hearing as that phone rings?
So I think sometimes landlords don't realize that there are certain dates in which um, crops need to be planted by. After that point, your return diminishes, and the likelihood of raising a good crop diminishes. And so, there are risk tools out there like crop insurance that we use personally that have a June 5th and for corn and a June 20th date for soybeans. And those are kind of not the final date that you can plant, but from that point forward, your coverage diminishes. And so there's an opportunity to say, hey, it's June 5th. We've tried like heck to get a crop planted, but when I look at what my crop insurance guarantees me, and I look at what inputs that I have bought that I can't return versus what I can return, is it more, am I going to be able to stay in business better if I take preventive plant and not plant a crop versus switching it to another crop like soybeans, or, you know, taking prevent plant and taking that money and, I still have cash rent that I need to pay. I still have some bills that I have to pay. We also have to consider down the road, what are we going to do to manage weeds and stuff on those fields? So I may be looking at cover crop expense or something like that if I do take prevent plant. But that may be a better option for me financially as a farmer to be able to farm for the next year to take that prevent plant versus putting out a crop, say the 10th or 15th of June, and having a very wet crop come fall may not even make maturity, and then be faced with lower yields, which is also going to impact my actual production history, so that my yield guarantees down the road are going to be lower because I planted a crop late. And so there's a lot of challenges, but I think as farmers and producers, we need to be talking to our landlords and saying, hey, when I look at my numbers, if we take prevent plant on corn versus switching it to soybeans or doing something else, financially, this one will get me down the road so I can farm again next year. And to realize that it wasn't just my poor decisions. I mean, it's been Mother Nature that has kept us out of the fields and has made this um, a decision that we didn't want to make, but financially, it is one that's going to keep me going down the road.
Just out of curiosity, what's the latest you've planted?
Corn, I've planted in the past. I've planted some up till the 7th or 8th of June. Um, and that was I have replanted some, the 20th of June, and that was when I got the shell in the corn that we replanted. There was a major yield decline, and it was so much wetter, and it made for a massive headache. And so, and soybeans, I don't mind planting them later. We've got till the 20th of June, and in southern Ohio at least, a lot of guys are double cropping beans, after soybeans or after wheat, and so and still raising decent soybean yields. So it's not ideal by any means, any of this, but those are kind of the options that are on the table.
Before I let you go, we mentioned that morale is low right now across farm country because of the lack of planting progress, and stress levels are high. You and I work on the farm stress front quite a bit. We're both part of the Ohio Agriculture Mental Health Alliance, and just want to make sure our farmers are mentally well, despite the challenges and nuances that it seemingly every year occur in this industry. So, what's your message to fellow farmers that are dealing with similar conditions and having to make similar decisions as you are right now?
We're all in this same situation together. Some of us may have took more risk and may have a little more crop planted, and things may be looking a little better, and then other guys, don't have any crop planted at all. But at the end of the day, you're worth more than the crop that's planted out there. You're worth more than the return on this crop this year. Remember that. You're more than the farm. You're a husband, you're a father, you're a brother, you're a cousin, you're a neighbor. And call and check on your neighbors. When you're having a bad day, call and check on somebody, because you know what? They may be having a bad day too, and you get to, talking, and it can really bring your morale back up, and something that we've kind of been discussing in our area. It's on a rainy day, call 4 or 5 guys up and, hey, come over to the shop. Let's just all hang out. I think we need more connection. We need more, especially in these tough times. We just need to love each other a little more. So,
You didn't even mention sending each other ridiculous TikToks, which you and I do on a consistent basis to keep each other's morale up. So that also add that to the list. Just send those really asinine TikToks back and forth to each other to keep
yep.
things light and keep things moving forward. Nathan Brown farms in Highland County, also a board member and state trustee for Ohio Farm Bureau. I appreciate your candidness. I know that it's not easy to talk about and think about, but having these conversations and helping farmers realize that they're in the same boat, and helping landlords realize that things aren't going to be quite as normal. I don't know what normal is anymore in Ohio agriculture, but it's certainly been a challenging spring, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and helping others get through this tough time as well.
Thank you, Ty. I appreciate you so much, man.
Find previous podcasts at ohiofarmbureau.org and search podcast.